tranquility, calmness, and serenity, with a twist. But the desert cannot be limited to these words alone. One must be prepared for the unknown and the unexpected. Both the people living in it and the animals are unique to the environment. The friend of man in the desert is the camel. They are given a head count just like humans. To get a sense of the sand and the desert, I traveled a part of my journey the traditional style. The feeling was serene, the calmness was inexplicable, and the journey was short but memorable.
Oh man, I can see you. Okay, we're gonna come down now.
With 2/3 of Iran either covered by dunes or mountains, this is a must-have experience. Every part of Iran enjoys a rich history. After all, thousands of years of civilization has left behind thousands of historic sites all over the country. While the cities have usually been developed much over the years, towns in the countryside remain rich and untouched. I traveled to one of these towns in Yazd, a city that has more seniors than youth, and that applies to the architecture too. Saryazd was a town that took me by surprise.
On our way to the city of Yazd, we went to the city of Saryazd, which literally means on the way to Yazd. This used to be the old gate of the city of Yazd, and they say it dates back to 3,000 years ago.
Along the roads of Iran, there are thousands of caravansaries, roadside inns built for travelers to recover from their journey and a safe place of rest away from the dangers of travel. These side inns for caravans were built to support the flow of commerce, information, and people across the network of trade routes, especially the famous Silk Road.
چون ما اولین انشاب از جاده ابریشم بودیم و به نظر میرسه که این ساختمان‌هایی که شما در اینجا کاروانسراهای بزرگی داریم، 2 تا کاروانسرا داریم. اون کاروانسراش بزرگیش یکی از کاروانسراهای بسیار بزرگ ایران محسوب میشه.
These buildings are built in a way to permit large animals such as camels to enter. The courtyard was almost always open to the sky. These sites have become hotels and restaurants to accommodate tourists and travelers alike. But the wonder of the city was the citadel of Saryazd, a fortress still intact after 1700 years. Our guide told me it was the only mud and clay building in the world in such a good condition. A fortress along the Silk Road that was likely a safe haven for travelers, and a place where locals would take shelter at times of war. There was a trench filled with water all around, leaving only one entry point to the castle. From what I could see, security would have been high at the castle. There were several layers of security even after you entered the fortress. The first, they would check you out. The second and the third, they would pour hot water if it was the enemy, and cold if they would try to set the door on fire. It also had 4 towers with places for archers all around the castle. This is one of the towers of the castle. Bowmen would defend the castle from here, and they would look from here. But what stood out for me was the liveliness the castle would have had in its heyday. With over 500 rooms in 3 floors, walking in the castle I could imagine the people that walked and lived here in those days. People used to live in these homes 1,700 years ago and walk in these alleys. Our guide told me the fortress was built in one go, and it was so complete in terms of architecture and engineering that it was still a wonder then and still is today. They thought about everything in building this fortress. They placed big clay pots in the homes that would work like a refrigerator, and they were prepared if the enemy tried to enter the fortress. There is no water here in the desert, so our guide told me the women and children would hide here during war.
This was like a guarded safe where they would store their valuables, and as you can see, treasure hunters have checked it out.
For me, the seeing and walking in the fortress was surreal. It was like traveling in time. Pedram Khoedadi for Iran.